Hi. All right. This is an email from Hallie May. Hallie says, "Hi Tabitha, I know you may not get around to answering this anytime soon." Well, you got that right. I had no idea when you wrote this, Hallie. It was probably a while ago. Anyway, do you have any advice on when it comes to having friendships with others who have anorexia too? I'm 20 and I've been in and out of inpatient since I was 14. In total, I've been in inpatient 11 times, which I'm ashamed of. Because I haven't lived a normal life and because I haven't been well enough to finish education or socialise, all of the friends I have are those who I've met in hospital through my outpatient eating disorder clinic. I love them all to pieces and I'm glad I have met them as they're all so lovely. But this also comes with so much heartache and worry. Whenever one of them relapses, I'm triggered. I feel in competition with all of them to be the most unwell, and I'm scared to let go of anorexia because if I do, I feel like I'll be left out because I won't have anything to relate to with my friends anymore. A few of the friends I've made in hospital have committed suicide, which is another factor that causes heartache, and I find myself worrying about my friends all the time. It's such a hard situation because if I get better, I leave my friends behind and I won't have anyone. But if I stay this way forever, I know in 10 years I'll be malnourished and miserable as fuck. Do you have any advice on this? Yeah, it sounds, we all go through different sort of, in recovery, that you go through different stages and at some stages, one thing applies and at another stages that might not be true anymore. And I think that probably at this stage in your recovery, it might apply that these friendships are not particularly helpful for you and that they're not helping you recover. And so you might find that at this point in your recovery, you have to say, I actually need to distance myself from these people for my own health. And I know that that sucks, but there's many things that we have to do for our own health when we're in recovery that aren't ideal. And they'd understand, these people, because they probably feel the same, I imagine, in some respects. And then you'll probably find that actually you go through recovery and you become more recovered. And then you find that actually you're not triggered by the same shit that you were triggered by then. And then you find that you actually can be a better friend to people with eating disorders if you choose to, if you want to, because you're doing really well yourself and you're actually giving them something to look at and model on, and it's okay for you to do that because you're not affected by them anymore. But you have to be really careful with that, and you have to actually really make sure that you are in a recovered enough state yourself to not be triggered by that, because otherwise it's just not safe for anybody. And so I think that the advice of it's just not healthy for you to have friends who have anorexia right now, that doesn't have to be advice forever. I mean, I talk to people with anorexia all the time. And it's fine, it doesn't trigger me whatsoever, but that took a couple of years to get to that point. I know it did. And I think it's a bit sad, though. I know that it's sad that you're like, oh, I have to have in common with people anorexia to be friends with them. Well, first of all, that's not true. I'm friends with plenty of people who have anorexia or have recovered from anorexia. And I don't have anything it's not like you have to have anorexia to have things in common with the person with anorexia. I have plenty of things in common with people with anorexia. I have had the experience of having anorexia for a really long time. That doesn't just vanish when you recover. You still have that experience. But you can use that experience, and you can use the experience of getting yourself recovered to actually be really beneficial, to be an asset to your friends who have eating disorders. What a lot of people find, though, to be honest, is that when they're sort of getting recovered themselves, they just suddenly want really to distance themselves for at least a while from people with eating disorders, just because, not even necessarily because it triggers them, but just because they just can't deal with that shit. They just don't want to deal with that shit. And that's totally fine too. So there's just no right or wrong here. You just need to do what feels right now. And what feels right now may well not be what feels right in 6 months' time or a year's time, dependent on how well you're doing with your own recovery. But I think if I were you, take up the challenge to get out, get yourself well enough, first of all. It's always got to be the priority. We can't do anything if we're not healthy. And then when you're getting healthier, just get out into the world, force yourself to. I know it's difficult, but sometimes if we force ourselves to do things when we're feeling, like you start recovery, you just don't feel social at all, and that's fine. Just sit in the house and eat and watch Netflix, totally cool. But then it's like, for me, it was a bit like, there was this point where it's like a bit like I just started to feel like I actually want to talk to people now. I actually felt like I could have the energy to be social. And then I still had that sort of resistance because I've been so long not being very social that it just felt a bit like, oh, I don't want to go out and talk to people, but I kind of do want to go out and talk to people. Force yourself to get out there. Force yourself to make friends with people who do not have eating disorders or any of that stuff. And you'll actually find that you can do that. So you don't want to, like, it's like you can't have this sort of, like, you can't be held hostage by this thought of, I can't be friends with anybody if they don't have an eating disorder. You've got to disprove that to your brain by getting out there when you feel ready and making friends with people who don't have eating disorders. You're going to be able to do that just fine. Like I said, probably wrote this ages ago. So I'm hoping that you're going to comment on this or send me a note and tell me, yep, I'm doing really well in recovery and XYZ. I'm hoping that's the case, but let us know. Okay, bye.